Welcome back, or should I say, welcome for the first time to Canon Events, you guys. That's right, I got an all new YouTube channel, and this time, we're doing it big, okay? This is Canon Events. We're going to be doing anime analysis, film analysis and review, and Dungeons and Dragons content, including rules analysis, okay? We're going to have a podcast with a great name that I will be showing you and announcing to you very, very soon, okay? No spoilers. Okay, we're gonna have a D&D podcast going on. We're gonna have some D&D content coming here from our Canon Events universe, my D&D server. I am a professional dungeon master, and I run D&D games just about every day of the week when I can, okay? Right now, we're coming back from a bit of a hiatus, so if you're looking for new Dungeons and Dragons games to play with committed pay-to-players, okay, if you know anything about online D&D, you know that pay-to-players are serious players and free-to-players are trolls. Okay, so if you're looking for a committed long-term game and you like this video, feel free to let me know in the comments. Shoot me a message or an email and we'll figure it out, okay? We'll find you a nice home in the Canon Events multiverse. Now, what is Canon Events? Canon Events, I want to bring you a multiverse, okay? The multiverse of fiction, of pseudo-fiction, in the kind of TTRPG universes that we explore and create together, okay? And I want to explore ontology. What is ontology? Ontology is the definitive boundary of what makes something real and what makes something fictional, okay? And the study of what makes something fictional versus what makes something real. Ontological boundaries are things that I love, and I love how paper thin they are. I love how something can go from being fictional to being real, and how something can go from being real to being featured in the One Piece universe, or something along those lines. We know that Chainsaw Man is notorious for doing that, and that recently, I believe that Spider-Man became canon in the DC universe because it was spoken of in James Gunn's The Peacemaker, okay? All of these things are examples of something called metalepsis. Metalepsis is the transgression of these boundaries, okay? Something leaping from one phase of the ontological process to another. Something going from very fictional to somewhat potential to real. I think that science is going to learn a lot more about the very, very tangible physics of ontology in coming years, and I think it pertains a lot to gravity and probability, and I think that I'm not crazy for saying that, and fucking take me off YouTube if you think that's too meta for the internet. But guys, we are beings of perception, and I think our power to opine is one of the greatest forces in the universe. So join me and Canon Events as I take you through one of my favorite pieces of fiction, maybe a little more than fiction, One Piece, chapter 1161. And if you're not familiar with One Piece, don't worry, because I'm going to be starting from the very first chapter in a new series very, very soon. I don't have a clever name for it yet, but I will. I promise you, I'm really good at clever names, okay? It'll come to me just from the Akasha tonight. This is for the acquainted. We're going to be exploring chapter 1161 of One Piece. I myself have been reading One Piece manga since I was a small child. I became acquainted with a volume 1 romance, Dawn. Okay, it was the only manga on the shelf in a very dark place where I was as a little boy. Yeah, I got a One Piece backstory too. Okay, and they had one shelf for the library and they had one manga on it, and it was Romance Dawn. And yeah, there's that dark part with Kuina, okay, but that shit kept me going. That, as a whole, the Kuina part was very sad. It's very sad, okay? However, Romance Dawn kept me afloat in a very dark time as a kid, and I kept reading. There's a little bit of a lapse here and there. Okay, maybe I had to catch up when I got into college on what I had missed in senior and junior year, but One Piece has always been there for me. And I hope that it will always be there for you too. This chapter is really groundbreaking, you guys. 1161. There must be some Japanese significance to those numbers, and I'm sure Ohara will be all over the numerology of it, but all I know is that the title of this chapter is insanely significant, okay, and it's poetic. This is a song of love bound under a hail of arrows. Early translations had it saying a poem of love under a rain of arrows. I think that actually sounded a little more poetic in my opinion. Now, our cover page is similarly as interesting. Our trio's a little different in this cover story than it has been for a while. Yamato's new wards, Ulti and Pepe, have gone somewhere else. Hopefully not in the castle unsupervised. We don't know. Hold on. Okay, but she's got a new entourage, and it's actually the freaking daimyo, the lord of, I guess, the entire realm, Momonosuke. And we've got Kinemon, who I also think is a daimyo now. Of Ringo, maybe of Ringo. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but Kinemon and Momonosuke and Yamato are reunited, and they're saying prayers to the great shrine at the flower capital. We see some names that we're familiar with. We see the former daimyo Uzuki Tempura, Fugetsu, Omosubi, Shimotsuki Ushimaru. Okay, Otaka, I guess, was one of them. I'm not sure off the top of my head because that one seems a little different, but we do see Shimotsuki Yasui is on the top row with Odin and Toki. He is a greatly revered, I guess, more recent hero, one of the more recent saviors of Wano that's no longer with them. These are the same sort of flower capital lanterns that we saw in the great battle with Kaido and Luffy in the end of Wano. Now, under that second row, we do see Izo, okay, and Pedro. We see a Kurozumi name that is rather strategically blurred out. You see that Yamato actually, and all of them have a bit of a white glow to them that is rather unnecessarily wide. And I think that helps, at least where Yamato is concerned, to blur out strategically some of these names and leave those mysteries. Those name mysteries drove us to and through Wano in One Piece, and I think that Oda still has a little bit more payoff and wants to keep reminding us of that. That's why they keep coming back up in this cover story. I mean, we've already seen the reveal that Gecko Moria may very well be a Kozuki Moria, and Gecko's just his nickname or some shit, or that even worse. In my opinion, one of my theories, and we'll talk about that another time, is that there is a Gecko and he is in a Moria, a Kozuki Moria bodysuit, because there's the stitches and the neck, and the body's shaped differently than a normal human would be. And that so maybe Gecko killed Kozuki Moria and made this powerful Moria suit. That would be a very dark, but I think in line with the character thing to do. So we'll look out for that. We'll talk about that more in the future. So we have this unnamed Kurozumi. We have Ashura Doji, who also passed in the great battle. Now we have Mar. We have what looks like Tyr or something, and then Taki or Tari, which I don't recognize either of those three names. Okay, the title of this is Oni Child Yamato's Golden Harvest Surrogate Pilgrimage, Volume 43, Where the Heroes Sleep. So this is indeed where the heroes sleep, I guess. I guess they burn corpses in Wano. They don't really bury them. Well, maybe, because we've seen shrines. Well, so is this just a communal shrine? It's very interesting and confusing. I did study this sort of kind of Shinto burial in college, and yet not for long. So while it's always interested in me, I was never immersed in this aspect of the culture enough to truly understand its caveats and fine tunings and details in a way that might illuminate. There are the house shrines. You have your house shrines of loved ones and even famous people, and then they have local shrines and then the actual burial shrine. So this may not be where their bodies rest, but this is a shrine for all of these people in the flower capital so that the daimyo, the leaders, don't have to go around the country every time they want to pay respects to any of these people. That makes sense. We're gonna move on from the cover page now. I know that was fun. We're gonna dig right into the chapter. We've got all sorts of things happening, and of course the narrator hits that right away, saying many figures converged on the island bearing their individual goals and desires, turning God Valley into an inescapable battlefield of nightmares. Dude, a battlefield of nightmares. Where else do we have one of those? Okay, where else do we have a battlefield of nightmares? The present in Elbaf. Okay, so this flashback may hopefully illuminate how to deal with a battlefield of nightmares, because the Straw Hats have to figure that out, or Elbaf is doomed. And you know how Luffy has been repeatedly like quoted as the child who's going to bring about the destruction of this or that Fishman Island or whatever, Elbaf or Heart, I don't care. Okay, and it's not gonna be his fault, but it's gonna be his fault if he can't save it. And he's got all the power in the world. He's got the power to warp reality, so all he needs is the power of knowledge of how to use those powers to defeat fucking Imu-sama, okay? Because Imu is on the battlefield flipping all of the cool pieces, dude. Dory Bragi, the new giant warrior pirates, okay? And God forbid a Straw Hat, if Zoro gets flipped, we're doomed. We're doomed. The one person that could take Luffy down before Luffy could even think about reacting is Zoro. God forbid Nami gets switched. We're all fucked. Okay, Nami, Robin, you put the devil... Okay, we're not going to talk about it. Let's focus here. So, Battlefield of Nightmares coming up, I think, is intentional, people. Now, we come in with a very cowardly and kind of gross looking Celestial Dragon talking to a Marine. I suppose he's just an officer. He has the hat, he has the cloak on, so he's not your average, you know, Marine private or recruit. He's above that. And we do know that a lot of the Marine privates, anyone below officer, was executed recently and before our eyes. So they're talking about that they want the lords to leave through the evacuation tunnel, which is going to go through one of the sides of the cut in half mountain or plateau or mesa or whatever it is in the center of God Valley. And he's saying like, not yet, I want that prize, I'm sticking around. Like, yeah, okay, because you're prepared for this. Now what I do like is that you see a lot more of that Celestial Dragon top knot than you see in the modern day here. So now we're kind of getting this very subtle fleshing out of Celestial Dragon culture and fashion through the years, that the top knot was more popular 40 or so years ago in God Valley, and I think that's fun. That's a fun little concept. I wonder who invented the top knot, and is this something that maybe arose within the last century and it wasn't around before that? That would be fun, you know. What did they wear in their hair before that? Not that I really give a fuck about these dirty Celestial Dragon bastards, but I mean, it's a fun part of the story, let's be real. Okay, so now we've got some locals, and one of the guys actually has an arrow right in the middle of his bullseye on his back, and he's saying, maybe this is our chance. Let's use the chaos to find a boat. And then, dog, like, it's not gonna happen, because you've got the chaos is Gold Roger, like, where's Shaki? She better be unharmed. And Rox D Zebek, okay, coming through here like, Erish, Teach, where are ya? And he's huffing. Okay, so not a great sign. The most powerful pirate on Earth is panting. And we've got Garbs looking to find Roger. Where are you, Roger? But Dragon's running through the fray with two babies. Two twin red-headed babies. He's looking for the Navy ships, and instead he sees some pirates. But behind him, a face that we only saw in the introduction of the Holy Knights, and a creepy one at that, okay? The Holy Knights feature some rather monstrous visages. And that's the next theme that we're going to talk about, is the increasing monstrosity of the portrayal, the physical portrayal of celestial dragons as we get into the end game. You guys, the celestial dragons have always been portrayed as monstrous, and the theme of monstrosity in One Piece is one that utilizes inversion as a literary technique to show us that the monstrosity, the true monstrosity of man, is something that all of us are capable of, no matter how we look, and that it is not our looks that defines monstrosity. We've seen it on both sides of the aisle. The celestial dragons look human. In fact, they have the most mundane, our worldly, mundane looks to them. They look like your average hikikomori, someone who doesn't go outside or exercise. I'm sorry if you fall into that demographic, no shame. The outside world is difficult, and that's okay if you want to stay inside. Exercise might be good for you, I don't know. But these people look the most mundane on the whole planet. They look the least like anime characters out of any anime you've ever seen. Save for some gag, manga, and anime. The celestial dragons, in that way, are humanized, but also vilified. In a world where everybody looks like an anime character, they look rather unsightly. And that's on purpose. It builds this theme of monstrosity so that the most human presenting people are indeed presenting so in a monstrous way. And furthermore, their actions are indeed the most monstrous in the series. They have slaves. They kill people, execute people who can't defend themselves, like Kuma's father. Okay, they do terrible things, like what they did to Ginny. And they take no accountability. Perhaps what could be described as the most heinous act of all, executed by the Celestial Dragon Order, I suppose by Imu and those truly in the know, is the manipulation of history, the gaslighting of an entire planet. The manipulation of history is something that we in the real world are dealing with every day. And every single history book and every single history class that's taught has some element of the victor getting to write the story. And things are never told truly and accurately in any sense. Everyone has their own side of the story, and people rarely collaborate with their enemies to write a story down. So as human beings who have an inborn thirst to know what is true and to seek veracity in our knowledge, it is up to us, the onus lies upon us to constantly be sifting through the information that we have access to and that we are given access to in this world, and to make opinions for ourselves of how much weight and how much veracity, how true these bits of information are. And quite often in the modern world, we are confronted with the staunch facts that most of the time we are not given staunch facts. Going back to One Piece, the celestial dragons look like real-world people, and they behave like the worst amongst the worst of monsters. They rape, they kill, they enslave people. They are controlling the world by lying and manipulating history itself, the truth, not allowing people the comfort of knowing what's real and what's not. And I think that that theme of monstrosity is excellently portrayed through these monstrous bastards. However, we are seeing a new side to it. The physical appearance of the celestial dragons is changing. Killingham was our first example. Killingham looked a little different. Killingham also has gills in his hybrid form, and he looks like a Kirin in his other form. So, what's going on with him? Is he a fish man? Is he half fish man? What and why is there an impure or imperfect genealogically person amongst the celestial dragons if they are persecuting people who are, as they say, impure or unpure genealogically. Okay, that buccaneers, fishmen, giants, half giants, tontata, dosundata, everyone needs to go. But Killingham and now this new character, Saint Satchels, with the laser beam in her mouth, are very monstrously appearing. And I will take you back. We're going to harken back. I'm going to put it up on the screen because in 1160, you also see there's a freaking Yeti amongst the Holy Knights. And we don't know what the hell's going on there. He's just a Yeti. He just literally is a Yeti. And I'm really excited to meet that guy, okay? So behind Dragon is this monstrous visage. She's also bigger and larger than life. In the same way that a lot of buccaneers are. She's got the massive honka bazongas that you'd expect from a One Piece lady, and she has these Doflamingo qualities to her. She has the Doflamingo shawl or pashmina or whatever you want to call it. She's got the Dofi sunglasses. Okay, the same sort of like cocky asshole look on her face, and her hair is styled and parted in the way of you know who what's his name, Domino, or Ivankov's partner in crime. And that kind of split is evocative of that kind of higher class, though. So we do see these Celestial Dragon motifs, but the worst of them, she does have what seems to be a graded sword, okay, and she's talking on the radio to someone about Garling having a kid. She's gonna preserve it for malicious purposes, but she only has one of the kids, and Dragon doesn't realize that yet. He's talking about don't kill the babies, and she's about to execute Dragon when she's chopped in half, along with the whole forest is absolutely obliterated, and you hear Whitebeard's voice saying, "Out of the way!" And you've got him arguing with Linlin. They're towering over Dragon. First of all, one individual Theta from Big Mom is probably the size of Dragon in this frame, which is absolutely mind-blowing to me, because can you imagine the power scaling that Dragon had to go through to be able to like intimidate Big Mom when, like, in his youth, one of her tits could have crushed him to death? I mean, it's crazy, bro. Let alone like if she stepped or sat on him, it'd be over, dude. He didn't have a devil fruit. He didn't have hockey at this point. I mean, he's done. No Luffy, bro. No Luffy. No One Piece. The One Piece, gone. So they're arguing, and I think this is a really fun moment, actually, because, like I said, the titties are bigger than Dragon himself. Big Mom is straight up pulling on Whitebeard's collar, okay, and she's kind of giving him the business, like, oh, you almost cut me in half there. I almost died there. She's acknowledging that Whitebeard can kill her that easily, at least at this point in time, and I think honestly at any point in time. Whitebeard swinging that big old dadao or whatever you want to call it around, he's gonna do some damage, man. Let's see. So he's like, I wasn't aiming for you. That was an enemy I cut down. How many pirate crews are on this island by now? Okay, he's basically saying anywhere I aim, I'm gonna hit an enemy. Okay, so you better watch your big tittied ass. You better watch your extremely fertile ass. Okay, all right. So then we got Shiki. Float fruit is confirmed. He's floating around the battlefield like it's nobody's business. So they just decided to make that. Go ahead and make that canon here. He's saying, "Hey, Newgate, were you trying to kill me, you rat, Shiki?" And then we've got Kaido. "Hey, Linlin, you lied to me." Kaido? It's the Rocks Pirates. Take them down and we'll be famous. Very hard to spot. I mean, very hard to miss, rather, the Rocks Pirates. At least these three and Shiki, who can fly. He's like, hold on. Do they think they deserve to win jockey too? Go back and get in bed, you miserable weaklings. And they're just quadruple wombo combo attack, dude. Linlin, is she swinging a sword? Or did she just smack him with the claws? She hit him with the ghetto claws. Okay, so, and this woman, Saint Satchels, who, by the way, and I meant to talk about this earlier, we have only just been introduced to the Satchels family. So if you're reading this, or if you're here along and you're like, oh, have we seen? No, we haven't. I googled it. They have not been introduced before, at least as far as One Piece Wiki and my brain remembers. So this is our first Satchels family member, and she may very well get married off into the Don Quixote family to produce Doflamingo very soon, because she kind of looks like him, dude. She kind of looks a lot like him. So, all right, moving forward. So Dragon is seeing the opening to escape. We didn't really see Saint Satchels restore herself, but I guess she's restored because she's talking to the baby. She's squeezing the baby. She's just throttling Shamrock. Okay, she's shaking him like, what's happening to the island anyways? Oh yeah, I forgot about this thing. And then we cut to Dragon, who's just wrecked on the floor. He's like, now I've got an opening to go east. But she's got the babies, huh? Wait, and then there's Shanks with a bump on his head. Very Goku moment. He's got a bump on his head. He's got X's for eyes. He's knocked out cold. So no, she doesn't have the babies. You've got one of the babies. Get the hell out of there, Dragon. Let's go. You got the good baby. Okay, so Garp. We cut back to Garp. Garp is here. He's approaching the battle. He's like, I sense a big catch up ahead. Found myself a first-class fishing spot. Come quietly, you Neptunians. Cacao, dude. He just fucking lays it down. Now, this is not quite the galaxy impact that we saw on Hachinosu. But this is still some Garp action. And even though I'm sure that the three of them could put up a good fight against Garp, they ain't got time for that. Whitebeard, Linlin, and Kaido are all fleeing from Garp, and I think that is very significant because Garp ain't even peak here. Okay, Garp, this is Garp in his prime, but this ain't Garp at his peak, because as we know about One Piece, man, your physical prime don't equal your maximum peak. Okay, usually you an old timer, and then you got one good galaxy impact before you get caught by Kuzan and put in an ice cave. Oh man, what a shame, dude. They should have, you know what I mean? They should have gotten a little bit more out of that. Turning around, Big Mom gathers Zeus and Prometheus. Dragon sees his dad. He's like, Dad? So at least one character in the One Piece universe knows their parent. I think that's the first one where they're just like, I know what my dad looks like. It's a crazy world out here. Bonnie, but Kuma's not her bio dad, so it's a fucked up world that Oda's created as far as parentage goes. But for once we see a character who's like, that's my dad. I can tell because I know that guy. Wow, I'm really impressed. Big Mom turns around, Heavenly Flare Blitz, and she pulls Prometheus in the right hand and Zeus in the left hand, and boom, Kamehamehas them together. But it looks like, no, that is Big Mom shooting that off, and Garp gets enveloped in the flames. Okay, we're about to see a truly iconic meme moment. Pirates all over are rejoicing that Garp was just smashed. Okay, we've got young Ivankov and Kuma. Ivankov says, who did that? What was it? Anyways, this is our big chance, Kuma. He's like, yeah. That's his big line in the chapter, yeah. You call that fire, Lin? You couldn't cook prime rib with this. Oh my god, he looks like a demon, Garp. The demon. Okay, and we're starting to see this dark side to Garp. Garp is truly scary here. Lin feels it. She says, damn it. She turns tail and runs. Now we've got Saint Satchels is back on the phone. She's reconnected her body. She says, well, the kidnapper's got to be dead by now. The baby's safe and sound too. Is that good? Baby's safe and sound? So there's a miscommunication. She thinks it's one baby, and they think she's talking about two babies. And I think that is quite humorous, but also perfectly opportune for our boy Dragon to get out of there with Shanks. And for Shanks himself. So they recall her, and Dragon, apologizing to the baby that he's not going to be able to rescue the brother. He starts to move, but he's wheezing too. He's running out of energy. Meanwhile, we've got another God Knight executing all of the commoners that were thinking they could escape earlier in the chapter. Finally, we come to a report. The Rocks pirates are coming from the southeast of the valley. The Roger pirates are coming from the northwest of the valley. I guess that's the orientation. That's the access of the slit in the middle of this, the canyon that's artificially been made. Very cool, very interesting that the kind of derpy icon of Rocks looks a lot like Punk Rotten. Okay, alright, we're taking back Shaki, that's Roger. Defend this spot with your life. The treasure hasn't been hauled out yet. The Rocks pirates are coming from the other direction. I'll save her first. No, me, get off. We're here to rescue you, Shaki. I'm Captain John. Oh shit. Okay, St. Sommers. Put a stop to him. You made sure to escort Shaku Yaku out, right? St. Sommers. Well, what? St. Sommers. You're kidding me. You can't handle one woman in handcuffs. Sounds like there's a lot of pirates out there causing trouble. Shakuyaku, trying to maintain her cool. I hate a woman who knows her own worth. What a fucking asshole. Holy shit, dude. So they're adding misogyny to the long list of sins of the Celestial Dragons, bro. And not only are they getting more physically monstrous, but they're just getting more monstrous in general in the end game. Because had we seen any examples of like violent misogyny before? Maybe, but to slaves. But then Jenny happened and we started talking about the harder and harder things, and more the Celestial Dragons are physically harming women, putting them down for being women. I mean, they are violent, brutal, abusive misogynists. St. Sommers, you're better when you're naive. You're better when you're naive. And he smacks the most beautiful woman on earth. And she wobbles and spins around with the shakuyaku kick, okay? And he actually yowls. You hear a crack, she breaks his arm. He says, yow! And then grabs her leg. And he conjures, so he has the thorn powers back then. He conjures a thorn club and he maims Shaki's beautiful thighs. Oh, he's gonna get it. He's gonna get it. Okay, the whole world is gonna be after this man's head. That's right. All those pirates are here to steal you back. You're in high demand. So high that it's ruined our big day. You're the one who brought her here, dog. Hold up. But alive, you're only gonna wind up with Garling. So the more emotional choice is to kill you, to make sure no one can have you. Very Negan moment. I knew I chose right by going with like a Negan-esque accent. They've come from far and wide to rescue you. When they finally get here, battered and bruised, they'll find their beloved brutally slaughtered. I wonder how they'll react to that. Fuck you, guy. I hate him, bro, but also crazy. It's a good character. He's a juicy villain. Okay, they're doing a good job. Terrible person. Now we've got the famous clash. Roger versus Whitebeard. And of course Whitebeard decided to take this one on, but they're really kind of nerfing Roger in this flashback. And guys, what I haven't seen anybody talk about is the perspective issue. This is a flashback being told by a Zebek, a Rocks fanboy. Okay, you really can't imagine that in Loki's mind Roger was diminished a little bit. It's something that I rarely see people talking about when there are flashbacks. We quite often take them as canon events. Trademark. But are they always? Have they always been? Okay, we talk about the silhouettes, we talk about Oda updating character designs. But what about the unreliable narrator option? Is it possible that as manga fans, we quite often overlook a very commonly used narrative device? This literary feature of having a narrator not be entirely reliable. is something that Oda may have been using the whole time, and we'll talk about that more in depth in another video, because guess what? I genuinely believe that we have overlooked the usage of unreliable narration for many, many years, and far too long, and we're gonna fix that. I think that Loki might not be the most reliable narrator, and that Harold, or whoever told him this story, his experience has been skewed by being a freaking Xebec fanboy. Harold was Xebec's Sasuke, okay? And so the fondness for them and kind of their old heads, their pre-Roger, this is before Roger was hot shit to the Giants. It's only been a blink of an eye. It's only been a couple years to them. I think that this story might be a little skewed in perspective. So we see the nerve happening, however. Boom, big clash, okay? Shaki, I'm here for you. Hey, are you okay, Shaki? I'm coming to save you now, says Shiki, the golden lion. So these pirates we actually saw at the bar, these are the pirates that waited in line for a year. And they're here too. So look, it's me. Here I am. And Roger's like, damn it, I can't get through. You gotta go get Shaki. Yo, the homie's already on it. Rayleigh like, whoop. Okay, he's fucking foo. When the anime characters put their arms back, you know they mean business, okay? They're gonna go extra fast, because that's how physics works. And we're back. He's gloating, St. Sommers, for too long. Can you hear that? They're right behind us. But they'll just be a second too late. Sommers, I don't think St. Garling would approve of. Shut up! If you don't say anything, it goes in the books as an accident. Just look at her face. The light of hope has finally gone out. This ain't no fairy tale. If anyone comes to save her, I'll kill them too. Reality is cruel. I'll kill you in 5 blows, and with each bloody smash, you better regret the peace-saddled optimism that led you here. Ha 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 ha! Huh? And he's got the most shit-eating grin on his face when I'll put the flowers on your grave to send you off. Rayleigh's mind, the fucking steeped in darkness, the Dark King himself. And boy, what a king. Salute, okay, because he knows how to treat his woman. He came to save Shakuyaku. And every other man on earth was here, but guess who showed up? Ray-san. Okay? And the look of fear on St. Sommers' face. So perfect. Spider Lily Steel, and he's just BAM! Dude, the amount of force that is, and furthermore, let us take in for a second that he didn't cut Sommers with the hockey. I genuinely think what we're seeing here is a hockeyless strike. We don't see the blade sheathed in hockey. We don't see none of that. The fact of the matter is that he hit his ass so hard, okay, maybe even with the blunt end of the sword, that St. Sommers has literally made a cartoonishly St. Sommers shaped hole in the wall on the other side of the room with a big bogya. And here he is. Shaki. Shink. Sorry I took so long. And she's just like, it's fucking grab a bucket and a mop, bro. Flashback, in the flashback, he pulls out the note back before they left. It says, come and get me. Shakuyaku, que romantico. He says, I've come to get you. It's literally poetry, dog. My boy's a poet. I've come to get you, and I've come to get you. Like, yo, dude, he fucking did it. And she's teared up. The most beautiful, tearful eyes. Oh, Rei-san, you took too long. shit, dude. I'm sorry you had to go through this. I was so scared. And she breaks down. She breaks down on his shoulder. The symbolism of her having a shoulder to cry on. For the first time in her life, she's always been seen as this object to be taken, this prize. Nobody could ever console her for that. Because if she let that vulnerability show, the shoulder she cried on might want to possess her and might bastardize that pure moment of reliance. Do you understand? For the first time, she has a shoulder she wants to cry on. And that shoulder belongs to a man whose heart hers belongs to. And that's the way it should be. And he just came through. Boys, men, if you love a woman, you do your best to be this kind of man for her. You love a man, you love anyone, do your best to be like Rayleigh for them. Because that's what love is all about. Amen. And here we have Scott Gabon. We have a heartbroken Roger, dude. Like, he says, never again. Never again. And Roger's out here like, can you do this later? Damn it. I wanted the bad bitch. We've got Chucky back, boys. Now take some treasure and let's get the hell out of here. Yeah. But what we didn't see yet, and why the flashback isn't over, is we didn't see what happened with Rocks. And next week on One Piece, guys, I truly think that the parts that have been left out here are gonna break us. First of all, seeing Sommers do what he did to Shocky in this chapter hurt. Okay, seeing Shocky in her moment, I've got a tear in my eye. That pulled my heartstrings. However, we've come to know and love Rocks in a very short amount of time. And this flashback has to come to an end. Now, whether it's broken and revisited, I do think that by the end of the Loki flashback, we are going to see that something strange happens to Rocks on God Valley. And that Rocks is probably going to have to witness the death of his lover, Eris, and maybe his presumed death or loss of Teach. And these things will push him to a state where he is vulnerable. Now, people in the fandom are saying that that is the way that Imu might Domi reverse-y him. I agree with that. I do think that kind of in that anime way, that if he experiences this great profound loss, it would make him vulnerable to having his will broken. That remains to be seen. And I really look forward to it. We've waited an extra week. Oda had some health issues and we all prayed, and his health issues seem to have gotten a little bit better. So we will see this week in chapter 1162 what happens next in the flashback. For now, let's talk about a few more things before we wrap it up. Well, the first thing everyone's talking about is the Rayleigh Shakuyaku Mihawk parentage. And Tekking pointed out very succinctly that the years don't line up, that Mihawk would have been born before this. However, I still think that if Shakuyaku gave birth to Mihawk, which we did see the kind of Caesarian scar in a previous Shakuyaku time skip, and that was closer to the time that Mihawk was born, that Rayleigh would probably still be the father. I don't think that this is what it took for them to make the hanky-panky. I think that they probably hooked up at least once on the Hachinosu. At least once on the Hachinosu. I mean, come on. Definitely once on the Hachinosu. And I think that that would probably be the safest place for her to, bring a child to term, is on the island ruled by a Davy Clan member. The fact that he didn't bring his Davy Clan to Hachinosu, I think is because he didn't want his weakness there for the pirates to get at, and not because of the Marines, that he could better defend them from the Marines if they were known of at Hachinosu, but he was relying on the Marines not knowing about them and left them out of the play until, unfortunately, God Valley became the playing field. Now, So Rayleigh's jacket is almost identical to a jacket we've seen Mihawk in, and I really do think that that's just a dead giveaway. Like, Rayleigh is almost entirely the father, and Shakuyaku is almost entirely the mother of Mihawk. It makes sense. We are seeing now that Rayleigh has some very Mihawkian characteristics when he fights. Rayleigh, a hockey master, did not seem to use hockey here. Now I'm going to go back, because Rayleigh does not seem to use hockey. In the "I'll put flowers on your grave" frame, his arm is not sheathed in hockey and his blade is not sheathed in hockey. It has a white part to it. The scabbard and handle are white. There's no hockey crackling. He wanted this to hurt. He wanted this to hurt and not damage or kill him in the direct way, but he knew that he was so angry that he knew that he was going to hit him so hard it was going to take him out of the battle regardless of hockey. And that's pretty badass. So you've got to keep in mind, if you put a God Knight through a cartoonish hole in the wall shaped like that God Knight, they're out of the battlefield for a while. You don't need to use hockey for that. All you need is the power of love. The power of love. Okay, so, and we've just found out the way to beat hockey is by being in love with Shakuyaku. So, new tip. Furthermore, Shakuyaku broke Sommers' arm with no hockey, with just a spinning back kick. And it's pretty severely broken. So what I'm kind of thinking is that Frieza dilemma happens, that they have so much power that they're not training, and that they're actually relatively weak and vulnerable without the powers. And so if you hit them, they're gonna break, they just heal. And if you slice them, they're gonna cut, they just heal. But they're experiencing the pain. So maybe the concussive force of Rayleigh's impact at the end knocked him out, because he's perhaps still vulnerable to being knocked unconscious. And that actually makes more sense the more that I think about it. Sommers has such a cool character design. It sucks that he's such a dick. And the same with young Garp, dude. I feel like also Demon Garp looks like old Garp, which is, so it's showing his potential maybe. His hair turned Super Saiyan. Young Garp has a great character design, and yet he is just a Celestial Dragon supporting asshole in this, so we don't like that. That's about it for this chapter, you guys. I really wanted to talk about the theme of monstrosity in reference to the Celestial Dragon's appearance here. I wanted to talk about a couple of other things that we covered. I hope you enjoyed our first inaugural episode of Canon Events, and I hope that you're gonna subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, comment, and let us know what you enjoyed or what you didn't. That's okay if you didn't enjoy, let me know, dude. But most importantly, you guys, I ask my fans over on TCG Pack Rats this at the end of every episode. I'm gonna ask you this every time too. Until next time, I want you to take care of yourselves, people. Canon Events out. Ayy.